Five. Hey, everybody, lots of stuff going on in Israel, and the war there is heating up in Gaza. And we looks like we might have just found out of another plan for another Operation Grim Beeper. And so that's one thing. Also, a big miracle took place in Gaza apparently over the last couple of days. We're going to talk about that. And so we got a lot to go through. I'm coming to you from Saipan today. War is hell, but somebody has to serve here. This is actually, I have to say, one of the nicest resorts that I think, ever seen. It's not really expensive, but it just very well done. Obviously, I mean, you can see there, we've got the ocean out there, very nice white sand beach. We've got some nice swimming pools here, beautiful gardens and grounds. Just very well done. The service is incredible. Very well trained employees. They're all from the Philippines, and people in the Philippines are the nicest people on planet Earth. And so, if you want to hire people in the service industry, you hire people from the Philippines. You can't go too far wrong. Okay, let's get to what we're talking about. Oh, and I wanted to clarify one thing, because I had somebody ask yesterday. They said, are these donations we're sending funding your luxury travel around the world? No, that's not how that works. CBN and Newsmax pay for my travel, and so no, this is obviously not the norm for me, but we'll take it. It's Connie's birthday week, and so it worked out real well for her to come along with me on this trip. And so anyway, we've really been enjoying this. Went to Tinian yesterday. I'm going to talk more at the end about what we saw in Tinian. Very cool story we put together there. But let's talk about what's going on in Gaza. First of all, the IDF is significantly ramping up their operations in Gaza, and they're establishing a new corridor. That corridor is going to split the Gaza Strip into 4 sections now. They have ordered other more mass what am I trying to say? Evacuations from the northern part of Gaza, especially like Beit Hanun and up there, because there were a couple of rockets that were fired out of Gaza at Sderot yesterday. They're still firing rockets. And they're firing them from places where the IDF has been already many times. They've already cleared it many times. And I'm just... So they're going to have to go in and clear out these areas in northern Gaza again and try to destroy any more further military stuff that they find in there. It's just incredible the amount of military hardware that's in Gaza. I mean, as I've said, we learned very quickly at the beginning of the war that Gaza is not a city or an area that's a bunch of civilians with a few military people salted in there. It is all military. It's a military base. And they have been preparing to try to attack Israel for decades, more than a decade. And so the IDF issued evacuation orders for various areas. Basically, what they're doing is they're pushing everybody out to the beach. They're saying that people in Rafah have to leave, and people in Jabalia have to leave, people in Beit Hanun have to leave. It's the largest evacuation directive since the beginning of the war, uh, or well, at least since Israel resumed operations against Hamas. There were additional warnings that were issued because of this new corridor that they're going to put in, and I believe they said it's a second Philadelphia corridor. So this second Philadelphia corridor is down in the south, apparently. I haven't been able to exactly locate it on a map, but I think it's maybe contiguous or very close to the Philadelphia corridor. These are some of the more heavily populated areas of Gaza. So this is a big deal. Now, in his address about this, Benjamin Netanyahu talked about that, look, we are going to do what it takes to get our people back. And we are no longer clearing ground, we're taking ground. He's making a distinction there because he's trying to basically threaten the people in Gaza that, look, if you don't give our hostages back, we're taking ground and we're keeping it. Somebody said on the news, they said Gaza bakeries closed because of no aid, no flour. Yeah, that's not true. I'll get to the aid situation in just a minute. Now, one of the things that came out from Gaza run Telegram channels over the last 24 hours is that the people in Gaza are starting to find suspicious devices inside some of their electronics. So specifically, they're talking about battery chargers. Of course, there's not a lot of power in Gaza, and so everybody uses the little bricks that you carry around to charge your phone with and stuff like that. Well, apparently, some of those bricks have been found to have listening devices or perhaps even explosive devices inside, and they're calling this like another Operation Grim Beeper. It won't be pagers, but I would say if you are an enemy of Israel, you should be very suspicious of any electronic device that you own, no matter what. And that's understandable. Joshua, no, I don't have any prayer requests right now. I'm trying to get through this. My prayer request is that I can get through this in a half an hour so that I can make my flight back to Guam today, because we're heading back to Guam. So there were targeted strikes in Lebanon again last night. The IDF and Mossad conducted a precision strike in the Dania district of Beirut, and are again still taking out Hezbollah leaders across the nation. But I really want to get to the most amazing story I've heard, I think, in the last several months, probably 6 months, that just dropped in Israel. And that is that the head of their the head of Iran's Quds Force, the commander of Iran's Quds Force, is now in Israel. And he's in Israel because it turns out that guy's a spy for Israel. And he was pivotal in the assassinations of Ismail Haniyeh and many other top leaders. This guy was listen to this. This is mind-blowing, okay? The commander of the Iranian Quds Force. So you don't get there by just like showing up one day in Iran and saying, hey, I'd like a job. How about commander of the Quds Force? That doesn't happen. They had to trust him. He had to be there for many years. He's Iranian, and so likely he was just turned either through money, sex, bribery, whatever. I mean, they're the typical ways that they are able to turn people. So this guy's, he's not like an undercover Jew that was in Iran. This guy was born there, grew up there, served in the military, but they managed to turn him, and the commander of the Quds Force in Iran was funneling information. He was getting get this, classified security briefings from, you know, his aides and from government leaders inside Iran. And then he's passing that on to the IDF. I mean, talk about a highly placed source. That is mind-boggling, mind-boggling. So on top of that, I mentioned there was a miracle that took place in Gaza overnight. And that miracle happens to be that more than 3,000 people came back to life. That's right. You heard that right. Of all along, we've been saying that the numbers coming out of the Gaza Run Health Ministry, which is a fully owned subsidiary of Hamas, they've been reporting death numbers that are inflated, impossible to, you know, to verify. But they had a list that they claimed was verified deaths. Okay, they had the list that we believe this many people died, and that I saw at one point that number was over 60,000. The official number was closer to like 48, 49, 50,000, something like that. And they yesterday just removed 3,400 people from that roll that they had confirmed were dead. And oh, by the way, most of those people were women and children. Another statistic that was found is that Hamas themselves are now admitting that 78%, or I'm sorry, 72% of the deaths that have taken place in Gaza that they have been able to confirm were military age males. Up until this point, they've been saying that more than 70% of the deaths were women and children. Of course, that statistic got picked up and parroted by all of the media. The mainstream media just loved that. That was, you know, gold for them. And they were saying this line over and over, you know, Israel's killing women and children, killing women and children. Well, as it turns out, there have been precious few women and children killed. There's still a number in the thousands, and that's a lot. That's too many. Every single one of those deaths sits at the feet of Hamas. So if you're just joining us, the huge coup is that we found out yesterday the commander of the Iranian Quds Force is a spy for Israel. And he's now escaped Iran, and he's back in safely in Israel. This guy was an Iranian. And, you know, so how they turned him, we don't know the whole story yet, but I can't wait to find out. That's going to make, I mean, this whole war is going to make one heck of a movie or book or something someday. Incredible. So Sarah says, you're a liar. Okay. I'm sorry you feel that way, Sarah. But Google it. I'm not telling you anything that's not completely easy to find on the internet. Go find it. Just Google it. Commander of the Quds Force. Now, these death numbers, I'm joking about that it's a miracle all these people came back to life. Well, it's absolutely true that Israel has done everything that they can to reduce or eliminate civilian casualties. Even to the point, I mean, it's part of the reason why this has gone on so long, is that Hamas hides in the civilian population. And when they do, then Israel has to try to clear those civilians out before they strike anything. By doing that, they're clearing out not just the civilians, but they're clearing out Hamas. Hamas goes somewhere else. And Israel is intentionally making it much harder on themselves to win this war. But they're doing it because they are committed to a moral conflict, to being as moral as they can in prosecuting this war. Now, I'm going to move that table. I'm going to move this over here a little bit. So, yeah, somebody says the big question is why they are now admitting that they lied about all these deaths. The reports about this don't say exactly why, but I have to say it's pretty crazy I mean, we're talking about not just a few dozen people. Oh yeah, we made a mistake. Talking about 3,400 people that they are now saying, well, no, actually, those people didn't exist, and that this is again on this is on the rolls that they said were verified. We saw the body, we buried the body, that kind of thing. Okay. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last night said, I want to read this quote. He said, last night in the Gaza Strip, we switched gears. The IDF is seizing territory, striking the terrorists, and destroying the infrastructure. We're also doing something else. We're seizing the Morag corridor. This will be the second Philadelphia, an additional Philadelphia corridor. That was the name that they gave it, the Morag corridor, MORAG. So Israel is completely ramping up in Gaza. I mean, to a level that they have not had. That number of people in Gaza, number of soldiers in Gaza, number of strikes in Gaza that they have not had so far in this war. They're also still striking in Lebanon. They've never stopped. They struck last night in Syria again. They are absolutely pounding Syria overnight. And they're doing that to try to counter what Turkey is doing. And I talked about yesterday in Syria, and that is they're, Turkey is trying to take over two military bases, T4 airfield, and then a military base that's closer to Damascus. That would put a Turkish base within about 50 or 60 miles of Israel, and Israel that's not going to be good. If Israel and Turkey end up going to war in Syria, it's going to get ugly very quickly. Now, as I mentioned, there were rockets launched yesterday out of the Gaza Strip. I'm looking here. The IDF is saying that they are striking military capabilities in the areas where Turkey wants to set up military infrastructure sites. So, their bases there, any fighting positions, bunkers, I don't know, whatever Israel can find out about. They're trying to remove that stuff off the battlefield. Uh, the Hama air base that they're talking about, Israel just basically obliterated the air base. So there's not going to be much there for Turkey to move into. All right, let's move on to Yemen real quick. Gotta check the time. I gotta hurry. There was a targeted elimination last night in Yemen by the United States. They took out a convoy. They haven't said who was in the convoy, but obviously somebody important. There were 15 to 20 attacks overnight on the various sites all around Yemen. The Baghdad Bob of Yemen came out and said, doesn't matter, we're going to keep fighting until you guys stop beating up on Gaza. And apparently we have not degraded their capabilities significantly, because they're still firing rockets and missiles at Israel. There was another one shot down over Saudi Arabia by the United States just over 24 hours ago. The United States is continuing to ramp up in the region. We now have 2 carrier strike groups in the region. The Houthis claimed to have sunk the Truman 3 times yesterday. They keep claiming that they're attacking the Truman, and the USS Harry Truman is kind of going like, we don't see any missiles. Like, we don't know what you're talking about. But the U.S., is, according to various sources, is just flying absolute historic amounts of military hardware and materiel into the region, all around. So not just the not just the ships that are out at sea, but our bases in Iraq and Syria, and even in Israel. We moved 2 more Patriot missile batteries and another THAAD missile battery into the region yesterday. Those are to shoot down any incoming from Iran, probably. The sheer amount of materiel that is being built up in the Middle East right now rivals the beginning of the buildup in Iraq before the war started in Iraq. And so this is significant. I think we're about to see a major escalation by the United States in striking at Iran. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but I mean, the point of doing this is to try to get Iran to back down. Obviously, this is a show of force, right? So that's great. But if the show of force doesn't work, then we've got to use the force. And if we don't use it, then we look weak. So, of course, there were wow, I just got word more attacks on the T4 airport in Homs. So Israel is not striking, they're not fighting with Turkey, they're just destroying all the things Turkey wants to take over. Turkey is right now, there's video out of Turkey sending military equipment, tanks and things like that, into Syria. So I've talked about this a lot in the past, folks. You are experiencing World War III right now. This is World War III. They didn't call it World War II while it was still a war. And they're not going to call it World War III until the history books write the story sometime later on. But I'm telling you, this is World War III. And it is ramping up little by little. Wars are extremely unpredictable, and they can go, there's 1,000 things that can happen right now today that could change the course of history and could cause the war to just explode and draw in a bunch more people, or could stop it. We just don't know. But I'm telling you right now, this is World War III. How do I know? Well, yesterday in Spain, the Spanish authorities took out a cell of Hezbollah fighters that were planning attacks, not in Europe, but planning attacks in Israel. But Hezbollah has Hezbollah has people all over the world. I mean, there are known Hezbollah factions in more than 40 countries. I was reading up on that earlier this morning, and it's kind of mind-boggling, actually, just how many countries Hezbollah has a presence in, including the United States, all across Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, Malaysia, the Asian countries. Hezbollah is a gigantic transnational criminal organization, and so they may have been decimated in Lebanon. They're on the back foot for sure, but they are still not. I don't know that it's even possible to completely wipe out Hezbollah. There's got to be a concerted effort worldwide to go after these transnational criminal organizations and destroy their infrastructure, destroy their financing, okay? So the United States is taking steps to do that. It just sanctioned several people in China and in Iran and in various places. There were, I think, 3 different countries: China, Iran, and one country you wouldn't, maybe like somewhere in Europe. The United States levied sanctions on these people because they say these people are part of the weapons, kind of pipeline into Hamas and Hezbollah. So the U.S. gets it. I mean, we're trying to go after these people with sanctions. We're trying to put a stop to the source of the conflict by going after Iran. And so that is always preferable to kinetic action, but we're just going to have to see how much of an impact we can have. I think that President Trump has the right idea of using those kinds of methods is more likely to result in at least a degradation without having to go to kinetic force. And that's what we want to do. But if we can't put a stop to it with the carrot, then we need to use the stick. Right Stand says, if this is World War III, not very bad. Well, not very bad for you, perhaps, yet. But there are a lot of places around the world where it is pretty bad. And, that's part of the difference, I think, with World War III over World War II, is in World War II, everybody understood we were in a war for survival. I mean, when Honolulu got attacked on December 7th, 1941, the United States knew this was a pivotal moment. And as I've been traveling across Micronesia here, Guam, Saipan, and yesterday Tinian, I've really gotten a much better sense for just the commitment, the level of commitment that the United States had to eradicating the threat from Japan and Germany. And it was 100%. It was not We're going to try to talk about it and try to negotiate a settlement. We're not going to use proportional force. We put together a gigantic navy with thousands of ships and sailed them across the Pacific and started taking these islands which cost thousands of American lives. This island I'm standing on, more than 3,000 Americans died taking this island from the Japanese. Of course, there were about as many U.S. servicemen who died on Iwo Jima than died in the entire war in Iraq and Afghanistan over 20 years. And this is over just a couple of months of fighting on Iwo Jima, just over a month. We had a sense back then that this was a war for our way of life. It was a war for our survival and the things that we hold dear. And we were willing to do whatever it took, including firebombing Tokyo, firebombing Dresden, killing thousands of civilians. You know, the United States didn't have a problem back then killing civilians. I mean, we went to great lengths to try not to, but we had a much better understanding back then that every civilian death is laid at the feet of the aggressor. So we are defending ourselves by destroying Japan. And if we have to kill millions of Japanese to do it, that's not our fault, because we didn't start this thing. Israel needs to feel the same way now. We are starting to see more protests inside Gaza. Over the last 24 hours, there have been 3 that I saw. In one case, a powerful tribe in southern Gaza that usually was on board with Hamas. They murdered a Hamas police officer in the street and filmed it. You don't want to see it, believe me. But they murdered this police officer because he had shot one of their people. There was a guy that was just looking for flour. He was standing in line for flour, and this Hamas policeman shot him because, again, in Gaza, Hamas says you cannot get aid if we're not giving it to you. You only get aid if we give it to you. So if you go get aid any other way, that's a crime to Hamas. So they shot this kid, and killed him, who was looking for flour. And the kid's family went and found the policeman that did it and executed him in the street. So we're definitely seeing cracks forming in Hamas's power in Gaza. In the northern part of Gaza, as these people are being kicked out of Jabalia yet again because of the rockets that keep being fired, they had a protest and were saying, out with Gaza, with Hamas, get Hamas out of here. So yeah, there's a whole lot of turmoil right now, and that shows that the pressure campaign by the IDF is working. And the IDF says we're not going to slow down. Hamas came out yesterday and said, okay, look, we're willing to release all the hostages in exchange for an end to the war. You have to rebuild Gaza, and oh yeah, by the way, we get to stay in power. Israel said, yeah, order some more bombings, please. Not going to happen. Hamas is not serious about giving up hostages. They're not serious about any kind of ceasefire because they're just not willing to give up power. So they are going to have to be rooted out, like the Japanese soldiers that were in the caves right here on the island of Saipan, inch by inch, foot by foot, all throughout Gaza until there are none left. And Israel is massing the forces in Gaza to do just that. So there's a ton of stuff, more happening. There was violence in one of the West Bank areas. yesterday there was a bunch of Israelis who were there having a picnic, and some Arabs showed up and started throwing rocks at them. The Israelis called their buddies who live in there, live in the Judea and Samaria, and the whole village came out, and they went to the village of the people that were throwing the rocks and started fires and started attacking that village. These are Israelis that are taking the law into their own hands because they're fed up with it. If you are an Israeli that lives in Judea and Samaria, that is your land. You are there legally. It is not an illegal occupation like the media likes to say. And so you're having to dodge rocks, and there's shootings and rammings and stuff all the time, just trying to go to the store, try to take your kid to school. You're just getting attacked all the time by your neighbors. I think I'd do the same thing. I'd get some buddies together and we'd go take care of that problem. The IDF eventually showed up and broke things up. No arrests were made. On either side. They just sort of calmed things down, but things are still very, very tense there. Now, I got just 2 minutes left. There was I saw one comment go by. Somebody that said that they disagree about the whether or not this is World War II. I'll talk about the parasite product in a second. And look, you're free to disagree. There was a lot of disagreement during World War II about whether or not it was World War II. But you go back and you read the history. It was a different kind of war. World War II is a different kind of war, and I've said very clearly over and over again that World War III is not going to be that kind of war. Everybody was expecting World War III would be another war where all of the nations of the world marshal their forces and choose sides and start fighting each other every place around the world. That's not what World War III is going to look like. World War III is very different because of the effect that the proliferation of nuclear weapons has had around the world. The more nuclear weapons, the fewer countries are actually able to fight each other, because Russia and the United States can't go head to head, or there will be nuclear war and the whole world will be destroyed. So World War III's got to look like proxy warfare, and proxy warfare means you pick a playing field like Syria, Ukraine, Israel, and you get your other forces, you get your proxy forces involved there, and you fight it out there. But all of the major players now are engaged in conflict somewhere around the world. Russia, of course, is participating not just in Ukraine directly, but indirectly in Syria and Iraq and Africa and Yemen, okay, and Lebanon. Okay, we know that there are Russian influences encouraging the conflict in Israel. Iran, obviously, is involved with all of their proxies against Israel. China is involved indirectly by supporting the conflict in Burma and threatening Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, and even the United States. They're trying very hard to look like they're just staying out of it, but they're not. China is working very hard behind the scenes to encourage the conflicts that we see today around the globe. So name me a country, a major country in today's world that's not involved. NATO is involved, so that's all the European countries, right? Iran is involved, North Korea is involved. So how is this not a world war? If just because we don't have tanks fighting one another, we're not going to. It's not going to look like that, okay? All right, so very quickly, yesterday we went to Tinian, and that's just right over there, actually. You can just see the corner of it over this way, right over there. You can just see the corner of Tinian. It's only 3 miles away from Saipan. You have to take a little flight to get there, 10-minute flight. That was fun. We got on the ground in Tinian. Tinian is very sparsely populated. It was taken by the Marines in 1944 prior to the invasion of Iwo Jima. And that airfield there, North Field, is the field where the Enola Gay and Boxcar took off from to go and bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So it was pretty sobering to go there. You can see the bomb pits where they kept those 2 bombs. They had to build special pits for those 2 bombs. And in those pits, you know, you can see the apparatus down there and everything. But you think those 2 nuclear bombs, which changed the face of the world, they were right here. That's pretty powerful. And that airstrip, that very same airstrip where the Enola Gay took off from to change the world, is now being refurbished into an airstrip that will be of use to the United States and our allies if and when we go to war with China. And I think a lot of people there we talk to feel like it's a matter of when, not if. And that's pretty astounding. It's a massive contract, $400 million contract just for the airfield, $400 million. And another almost $300 million to develop infrastructure on the island. Now, I'm going to be talking a lot more about the stuff that I got to see out here, because there's a lot more really fascinating aspects of this that teaches you kind of just how bad China is right now. Just how bad their economy is and how overheated it is. The Chinese and how they have tried to use soft power, economic power, to take over large swaths of the world. I mean, these are American territories that I'm standing in. This is an American territory here, right? And it's right there. Actually, let me move the camera. If you see the tall roof right there that is behind this building, that taller building back there, that is a massive Chinese hotel casino that was built by a Chinese billionaire back in 2017. And then it went defunct over 2020. I got to sneak inside that building, and it's unbelievable inside. It looks like the Taj Mahal. They've got 200-foot dragons hanging from the ceiling made from Swarovski crystals that cost $1.5 million each. And that thing has not been opened since 2020. It's a huge, monstrous eyesore here on Saipan. It's falling apart now. They never finished building it. And all of that has to do with, I mean, this is, again, an American territory, but this Chinese billionaire is coming in here and taking over very important parts of this island. Unfortunately for them, this time it didn't work out. On Tinian as well, there's a massive resort that I flew my drone over yesterday, where they came in, built this huge resort. It operated for several years, and they never paid a dime of tax to the United States like they were supposed to. And eventually the U.S. shut them down. The government of Tinian shut them down because they owed more than $70 million in back taxes, but that's more than they spent on building the resort. So they just taking advantage of the tourism on these islands, taking the taxes, not paying taxes to the U.S., and then when they get in trouble for it, they just shut down and move on. They say that there are enough empty houses inside China to to house 3 billion people. Billion people. Because just the way that the Chinese government was encouraging investment inside the country and prohibiting investment outside the country, unless, of course, you're a Chinese billionaire and you can, pay off the right people, and then you can come build this gigantic hotel over here. I'm going to do a whole video on that when I get a chance to do some editing. So, all right, I've got to run, folks, and I got to go catch my flight to Guam, and then tomorrow morning we'll be headed back to Panama. It's a long flight, so we've got some really good videos I'm putting up for you. Somebody was asking about the parasite cleanse. Let me just talk about that real quick. The wellness company, TWC, is now one of our sponsors. They're not sponsoring this video, but I'll go ahead and tell you about it because I believe in it. And they're putting together kits with anti-parasitic medicines that you can get and carry with you when you travel. And that's very important because you go to some of these places like I go to, the food quality is not to standard, and so it's very easy to end up with parasites. And a lot of people, they just don't know it. They don't even know that they have parasites because they just start feeling lethargic. They feel kind of sick or tired. They kind of have this brain fog. You get kind of feeling weird. And as it turns out, a large percentage of people, even inside America, have parasites. And so one of the things that Connie and I do on a semi-regular basis is we'll take some mebendazole or ivermectin for that. Now, I'm not giving you advice on that, but I'm just saying that's what is done in these parts of the world to clear out those parasites. And so the wellness company has put together these kits that you can buy. You go to twc.health/hotzone, and you can get a discount on those, 10% discount. And you have to put in a code, HOTZone. The code is HOTZone. Maybe Mama Rissa can put that in as a link in the chat. twc.health/hotzone, code HOTZone. And you can get yourselves these things. They're prescription, so you've got to talk to a doctor, and they have it all worked out. But it's something that, because I use it, because I believe in it, I feel good about telling you about it, whether or not I'm getting paid to. So that answers your question there. Now, we're going to put all that stuff up over at chuckholton.com, so I would encourage you to go to chuckholton.com. We're going to put in a lot of videos up over there. You'll be able to see the videos first at chuckholton.com and later on YouTube for some of these videos we're coming out with. A lot of extra content over there as well. So please make sure you like this podcast. And Soy says, how do you get diagnosed for parasites? You can go to the doctor and they can do a test if you want. But this stuff that's not going to kill you to take it anyway. I don't even bother. I just take it once in a while just to clear out any parasites I might have. But again, I'm not a doctor, but that's what people do in these parts of the world. And that's all I'm doing is I'm reporting that to you. I'm not telling you should do that. I'm just saying that, in developing countries around the world, people just, they just take that maybe every 6 months and figure, well, it can't kill me and it might get rid of any parasites I have, okay? So harder to get in the United States, and that's why TWC has put together these kits so that make it easier for you to get it from a reputable source in the U.S. All right, that's all I've got. I'm way over time. I got to run and get to the airport. So thank you very much for watching. Please hit the like button and share this with your friends. And again, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So we'll see you again soon. Take care.